Well, I am in, as you already know, I'm just outside of Austin, Texas, and we love it. But funny enough, it's a snow day today, Rebecca. If you can believe it, there is a dusting of snow that is out there. You can still see the grass, and I am bewildered that this is how we close the schools. Blows my mind.
Yeah, snow days are very different in the Midwest than they are pretty much any place else, right? Spent a little time in Tennessee and everything shut down the day before. I was like, this is like, you can't even sled on this. This doesn't count for anything, right? Growing up outside of Chicago, very different. You went to school all the time.
Yeah. Oh my God, I know. It was funny. I remember being a kid. I think in the fifth, I have this distinct memory, sixth grade, fifth grade, where it's snowing, the bus is coming, and I have to take the trash out to the curb, and the wind is blowing so hard, it's moving my little sixth grade body is getting moved down the street, and I'm slipping, and it's ice, and the snow's got to be 2 feet deep, I'm on the way to the school bus. Like this, we still go to school like kids.
It's what
I don't
you
understand
do.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We lived a little bit off of the main road where the bus picked us up, about a half a mile, but it was a straight road. And so you came around the corner and you're like, oh my gosh, the bus is there. Like, I've got 3 minutes. And if I don't go to school, my mom will have my head. So
Oh
there
yeah.
was no missing. Running in your big, moon boots and your heavy
Oh,
coats,
oh,
running to
moon
the bus.
boots. Did you have one of those pipe zip jackets too that came up and zipped forward and it was just a
Abs-
big thing? It was like a
yes.
weird
Yes.
profile.
Yes, exactly. Oh
Not
yeah, and
sure if
then you're
that did any good,
sweating
but
to death, right? You're on the bus, and then you get to school, and you've got all of these oh, hot mess. Which is why I moved. Which is why I said I'm moving to Arizona and dragged my husband along with me.
oh, I don't blame you. I'll never live in cold, like cold all the time. I think snow is great on a vacation.
Cool.
I don't want to deal with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nope. Nope.
Oh man.
We'll
Okay.
go
Well,
back to Minnesota to see our kids, but that's it.
yeah, that's it. It's good to visit. Good on a postcard, that
Right.
sort of thing.
That's
All
right.
right. Well, you ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to the CXR channel, our premier podcast for talent acquisition and talent management. Listen in as the CXR community discusses a wide range of topics focused on attracting, engaging, and retaining the best talent. We're glad you're here.
Welcome, everybody, to the Recruiting Community Podcast. Welcome back. We are bringing industry insights and updates, we think, in the form of a conversation. So they're all brought to you, of course, by the CXR Career Crossroads community. Today, we've got Rebecca Warren, who's going to join us. She's from Eightfold. She's with us today. We're going to discuss recent findings on a misalignment, if you could believe it, between HR leaders and sort of business strategies. We're going to explore a couple of the implications for talent leaders. They've got a great report. We'll reference that place you can go to download that report. Pretty interesting findings there. A couple of things first before we jump in. We are streaming on the YouTube, the Facebook, the LinkedIn, the Twitch. You can get past and learn about future episodes out at cxr.works/podcast. Try to keep that pretty simple. If you happen to be on LinkedIn with us today where we're live streaming, you can go ahead and say hello and drop a question in there for our guest, or you can ask us a question. We try to get back to all the comments there. And then as a reminder, this show, almost 500 episodes of it thus far, if you can believe it, it is an ad-free labor of love. So nobody paid to be on the show. Nobody was incentivized to be on the show. We've got folks on here because they are doing really interesting work. They've got some interesting perspectives, and we want to kind of share those with everybody. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. Let me click on all the buttons and pull Rebecca back in here. Rebecca, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. Enjoying my warmer weather than what you have right now, for sure. Here outside of Phoenix.
It's 31 degrees here. It's not so bad, but I understand infrastructure, the roads, I get it, but I still can't believe there's no school today.
Yeah. Lots of parents scrambling to figure out what do we do with these kids now.
Do you think there's this is so off the books, but do you think that they can handle that better now that they've been through the pandemic, and now that they had months and months with the kids at home? Like now they got some stuff the kids can do.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think people understand the door is closed. Do not bug mom or dad, right? Like that is not okay. So, but I still think when it just throws off your plans, right? It's just that little glitch that just makes your day a little bit less calm when you got a lot of other things happening outside of your doors.
Yeah, I agree. My kids, so I have two girls, they're older now, 24, 27, and we had a conversation the other night about how they remember I had kind of an open work environment because I was not a work at home executive, right? So
Hmm.
they could just kind of wander on in, and they knew, man, if it was, before 5 o'clock, that was a no-go zone. They knew not to go into that
Stay
area.
out.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah,
Yes.
so funny.
I think the biggest thing is with the pets. That's what I see. All the pets running around, like sitting on. I have a cat who likes to sit on my shoulders, especially when I'm on meetings. I made sure the door was shut, so he couldn't do that. But I think it's kind of fun. You get to see people's lives, right? Like what's actually happening, as opposed to sitting behind a sterile desk on a phone. So.
I had a hard time with that. This is not even the show. I had a hard time with that when I was probably in my 30s, I think, and people would call in or we'd do a video call, and I was seeing too much of their home environment. I felt that was so
Oh, it felt like an
unprofessional.
invasion. Ooh,
Oh,
too much.
it was so unprofessional. Like, just get your act together and be more professional. And now somebody's kid walks into a meeting we're having, they're like, "Oh, meet little Johnny," and
Right.
nobody's like, "Oh," and nobody cares.
That's right. That's right. I want to see the pups. Hey, tell me about that thing that's on your mantle back over there. Yeah, a little more
What's happening?
casual
What's
now.
happening behind you?
Yes, that's right. That's right. I do ask those questions for sure.
Well, look, Rebecca, we're glad to have you on. You've been at Eightfold, I think, for right around 4 years.
4 years.
You're a
Yeah.
former, just give everybody a little context, right? You're former senior director over at Cracker Barrel. You were director of TA at PF Chang's.
Yep.
Why don't you give us a little bit of kind of an escalator pitch so folks know more about you? Like, who is Rebecca Warren, and why are we going to pay attention to you today?
Yeah. All right. So TA background for a long time. So spent a lot of time in Minneapolis in the Minnesota space, getting to work and network with TA folks. So came up through um, sourcing and recruiting, moved into TA leadership, and then came to Arizona for PF Chang's when they moved me here. And so been an interesting journey because my undergrad is in youth and family ministry, but my master's is in organizational leadership. And so I always knew I wanted to be around people. And when I actually got an opportunity for Eightfold, it was somebody who had been a former vendor of mine. She was in sales and she had come over to Eightfold
Oh,
and she goes, "You should come work here." And I was like, "I should? Why? I don't know tech and I don't know anything about, about customer success, which is the job she said you should look at." But then she said, "Hey, because of how you interact with people, that's the kind of folks I want to take care of my customers after I sell them." So ended up helping build out the customer success department here. Spent about 3 years doing that. Started as an individual contributor, moved into leadership as well, and now I'm over in marketing. So talk about a non-traditional career path, right? But all
yeah.
of it's centered around talent, right? And so the new role that I'm in that we created, it's a very small group. There's 4 of us, but we're talking about talent-centered transformation, which is how do we continue to focus on people, but focus on the skills that they bring to the table rather than what their background, what their resume looks like or what their particular background looks like. Let's focus on the things they bring to the table and move towards a skill-based organization. So that's what I'm doing now. Super fun.
I love it. Now I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I went to go grab so that I could do this thing here, right, where we put the thing on the screen and it says connect with Rebecca and it puts your LinkedIn profile. But I got to tell you, when I went to go grab your URL today, Ms. Taria's Murder Mysteries.
Oh, mysterious murder mysteries. Yes, I'm clever, mysterious. Yes. I think that was my outlet for things that happened at work, right? Like you had to keep your professional, stance on at work, but then I could write and facilitate murder mysteries where I got to kill people. So it was like a stressful outlet. I've written some really fun ones. John Cusack is one of my favorite actors, so I've written a whole entire murder mystery around John Cusack movies, all different kinds of fun ones. So if anybody needs a murder mystery, I write them and facilitate them.
I want to make sure I understand. So, and I've done this twice, and I love it. Like everybody gets dressed up and in character, but you're
Yes.
writing murder mystery packages, and then like people can use those at their parties.
Yeah, but I facilitate them. So I write myself into that murder mystery so that I can change where the trajectory is, if it's going off course, or if we want to add a little bit of intrigue. So I'm always some back figure who gets a chance then to change what the narrative looks like. It's a story
Oh
of
my God,
life,
I love
right?
that.
Like just poke, and all of a sudden the story goes that way.
Oh my God. I love that. I love that. So sorry to
Yeah.
put you on the spot. I just thought that was so great.
No,
I'm like,
that's good. That's good. I love it. We have to say it out loud, mysterious, right? Otherwise, mysterious, it's like, that's weird, but you have to say it all together.
Oh, I get it. I missed that
Mysterious.
entirely.
Yeah.
Oh,
My
mysterious.
husband
Well
helped me
done.
come up with that.
Okay, well,
The thing.
let's talk about something that's not mysterious. You've done a report. You guys commissioned a report. You put some work together. Why
Yep.
don't you give us a high level overview? Why do the report, and then if you can, kind of share a little bit about sort of the methodology of the research you guys did, so we can, because I've got some questions for you. I think you had some interesting findings we can talk about, but set us up for that.
Yeah. So we partnered with 360 Insights, and we did a survey of 500 HR leaders, VP level and above, at companies that had over 5,000 employees, and it was across 6 countries. And so the idea was really to understand where there might be challenges with how HR connects with overall business strategies. And so that's really the title of the report is Misalignment Between HR and the business. And we found some really interesting things. I think things that maybe didn't have a spotlight on them before, but also things that were like, well, duh, of course, we need to pay attention to this. So a couple of cool things, well, a lot of cool things came out of it. We've been talking about it for the last couple of months. So
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, let's jump in, because I do have a couple of questions. I
yeah,
want to start with the topic of strategic alignment, and we'll throw a URL up here on the screen a little bit. Folks can grab that, and we'll talk about it, where they can get the report here at the end. But the report, as I see it, sort of highlights this misalignment between
yeah,
HR leaders and sort of the broader business strategies, right? Where they're just they're not connecting the dots there. So
yep.
if we keep our TA hat on, how do you think TA leaders can work more closely with those lines of business, right, to make sure that there is alignment, or to at least highlight or demonstrate maybe TA's contribution to a bigger, organizational goals or bigger organizational strategies? Because I think there's
Yeah.
always a big conversation around, well, is TA's an order taker? They're not really contributing outside of a little meat in the seat, sort of powering a little bit of the engine. But I think it's a lot bigger than that for really successful organizations. So was there a finding in there that says how TA leaders can work more closely, how they can highlight those contributions?
Well, yeah. So one of the survey questions that we had, and the answer that we got was 53% of HR departments are aligned and fully involved in the development and the organizational's overall business strategy. 53%, like not 90, not 80, of like half are
Yeah.
aligned with what's happening at the top. And so, of course, you're going to see those cascades down, that cascades down, where if there's misalignment at the top, of course, you're going to see where HR is not fully involved in those decisions. And so, I spent some time talking to Dylan, who is one of the analysts from 360 Insights, about this. And he had said he feels like there's a communication issue. And I think that's probably a very broad stroke at the top level, that there is a disconnect in communication. But I think it's much bigger than that, because you just can't say, well, talk more and it'll be better, right? That's just not how it works. So like some of the questions that we're starting to ask is, why is there that big gap? Why are half of the folks that we talk
Yeah.
to misaligned, right? So is there no trust? Is there no visibility? Is it that HR is not considered valuable? Are they not strategic enough? Are they not considered, that they would add value if they were pulled into those business decisions? We had just lots and lots of questions. And one of the other things too is the talk about HR needs a seat at the table. Well, HR probably has a seat at the table, but the next question is, do they have a voice, right? I
Yeah.
think as you talk about TA and HR in general, looked at as order takers, as admin, as planning events, right? Like as box checkers, compliance. So TA and HR are continuing to move out of that. They have to move into a strategic place, as opposed to having that disconnect from what's happening at the top. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure I
think
answered your question, but keep going.
no, you did. You did. You made an interesting call. It's I'm reminded of. Maybe I miscredit this, but Eric Weingartner a long time. We were somewhere once talking about this, and he called somebody out because they just kept saying seat at the table.
Hmm.
And I think at some point he said, "Do you know what a seat at the table is? It's a piece of furniture." Right. And I think that was sort
Exactly.
of a fun sort of it's that same thing that says, look, you are invited to the party, just nobody asked you to dance. Like there is this piece of it where like, oh, TA is part of it. But if nobody's having those real conversations, if TA is not in a safe space where they can sort of push back on some of those strategies or to better understand that holistically, I think you do end up with an awful lot of disconnects. And I will tell you, I have talked to quite a few leaders in the last couple of quarters who are kind of scared or hesitant
Hmm.
to make a lot of noise because of
Hmm.
what we've sort of seen happen to the space in the last year. Now, I'm not saying that's all leaders, but they have a little bit of a second thought in terms of like, well, how hard do I push?
Yeah.
Because what
Yeah.
could that mean for me or my entire function downstream?
Yeah, and I think it comes to, instead of maybe pushing, it comes to asking the right questions, right? As you said, there's a seat there. What are we doing about it? What does that voice look like? And I think it ties into the questions of whose voice are we listening to? Who's missing from the conversation? Who do we need to invite to the conversation? So how do we continue to ask the questions of who should we be listening to and why, right? TA is fundamental to an organization being able to succeed, right? Leaders have
Yeah.
said that that's one of their number one priorities, but they're not putting their money where their mouth is. They're not investing in transferable skills. They're not looking at new tech. They're not talking about AI. So again, there's that sense of this is important, but because TA maybe and HR don't understand the business goals, they're focusing on the wrong thing, right? So maybe they're hiring the wrong people. They're looking at the wrong tech. They're doing all the things that they think are going to make a difference. But if you don't understand that business strategy, it's just going to be an exercise in futility, right? You're just going to keep spinning your wheels.
Yeah, and I think it's a great segue because some of the most amazing TA leaders that we get to talk to make data-based decisions, use data
Hmm.
to drive they may come from this point of inquiry, right? Coming in with
Yep.
this yearning to sort of understand the larger strategy, but they're bringing data with them to sort of back their questions or back their rationale. So that segues nicely into the other piece, which the component of that was data and insight. So if you're to look at sort of the findings, the outcome of that report, that many orgs, I think the report was many orgs are really struggling with getting and leveraging the data to make database decisions. What I guess my question for you, Rebecca, what steps maybe do you think TA leaders could take to sort of improve or even begin using data to drive better hiring decisions, or maybe even be part of workforce planning where they're sort of an afterthought now?
Yeah. Yeah, because one of the other stats that we have here is just 44% of the survey respondents believe that their talent strategies are aligned with overall business goals. So that's like, that's not great either. So I think, okay, I'm going to date myself. I've been in TA. I was in TA for a long time, right? Before we had our ATSs, right? We were smiling and dialing. We were doing everything on spreadsheets, right? So I've been doing this for a long time, and I think we used to have to do the trust me. You need to talk to this person, just trust me, right? And so we were trying to figure out, how do we sell the candidate on a non-traditional job? How do we sell the hiring manager on talking to somebody
Yeah.
that doesn't feel like it fits the profile? We did a lot of trust me's. And the way that we're moving now, and we look at what AI enabled technologies can bring, when I think about like what Eightfold brings, right? I don't have to just say trust me, because I can bring the data. So I can look at, where are people located in the world, right? If you say you need the purple squirrel with, I always say, like a top hat and sunglasses on, right? If you're looking for that person, but I can show you the data that says there are only 6 people in the world who do this, and they're not moving to Texas or Minnesota or someplace, right? Like, if I can bring the data to say, here's why you should talk to this person, here's what they bring to the table, here are the skills that you're looking for, right? I think the taking even just little bits, even if you don't have a platform like Eightfold or another AI data-driven
Sure.
platform, you can still bring the information, right? Like, here's where they're located, or telling the story of here's why you should consider this person. Like, I've had so many tough challenges in staffing before I had the data, but that I still had to go show, hey, here's this skill, here's how it transfers, here's what they bring to the table, here's what you want them to do, here's how they would do it. So I think the data makes the difference with the hiring manager, and it also helps shift off of some of those silos. One of the things we've been talking a lot about is how folks tend to hire in silos, right? A hiring manager says, I want this,
Mm.
and that's what they want. But if we don't know what that's tied to, right? If we don't understand the bigger business strategy, we're hiring somebody for Bill because Bill wants this person. But when we as TA leaders start asking the question, hey, but I know that this business strategy is to do X and this person might be a little narrow, you may want to think about this one, or you may want to think about this one. Here's the data that shows, right? Here are the skills that they're going to need in the future that are going to tie to the business goals that are going to drive the business further.
Yeah, I think it's a call out too, because then the hiring that you're doing is much more narrow.
Mhm.
Right. And
Mhm.
and to your point, it's much more siloed, and it's not contributing to sort of the broader, what ideally the broader strategy should be, sort of around talent. What should that role look like in 3 years? What should this org
Right.
function like, in 2 to 5 years, that sort of thing. I agree.
And
I,
and it's the downstream of that as well, because if you hire somebody who only fits in this tiny little niche and you're not focusing on skills or understanding where that person could go, you're setting yourselves up for, again, hiring the wrong people. And now they don't have a place to grow. They're connected to Bill, right? And Bill's like, oh, we're changing strategies and you don't really fit, peace out, bye. And so now you've got attrition, you've got folks leaving, you've got bad taste in your mouth. I was hired
yeah.
to do this and then I got let go for that. So there's a lot of challenges if we're not asking bigger questions. And that's one thing, like when I talk about that with TA leaders, like, what if every single position that you were filling for, you could ask the question, what business objective does this tie to? What if my CEO said, here are my 3 objectives, and I'm hiring the person and I know exactly which one it ties to? What would that be like?
Yeah, I mean, you're having you're having this discussion with TA leaders who are in that same group of people who are saying, "Oh man, we were on our way to delivering talent advisors, and somewhere along the way, I look up and now all I've got are order takers." And the biggest thing, I think, in part to sort of combat that, and we talk about arrows in the quiver, right? Data
Mm-hmm.
is one of those, because
Yep.
there's so much street cred that comes to when a recruiter walks in and sits down with a hiring manager and says, "Well, this is why that doesn't work, or this is why the wage
Yeah.
would be this, or if you just move the parameters just a little bit, this is how we can get the talent more quickly," or like that more robust involvement, that advisor piece. I think it's a really big point of it. On another note, another arrow in the quiver, so not just data, but also technology. I think that report came out and said there's an underutilization of HR or TA technology to address the big challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So my question, I guess, again, I'm keeping our TA hats on, or a TA lens on it, that perspective. And I'll even back you out of the report, Rebecca, if you want. Like, if it's just stuff you're seeing and speaking to other TA leaders like we do every day, are there any innovative things that you're sort of seeing, or ways that you're seeing to better integrate things like AI or predictive analytics, like fully bake that into the recruiting process?
Yes. And there's lots of there's so many things. Like, okay, so one of the things that thinking about job descriptions, right? We've got a job description that has a list of things that we say are ideal. But we
Mhm.
also have data that shows that folks say, I'm not going to apply to that role unless I feel like I've got 80% of the requirements, right? Or there's
Mhm.
certifications or education that's required. I don't have that. I'm not going to apply. So, like, a really simple thing you can do to make that more understandable to an employee or to a future employee, right, to a candidate, is you can put in the KPIs or the OKRs. What are they expected to deliver in the first year? Like, what if we didn't put in a whole laundry list of all of these things that we say are preferred or required? And what if we actually put in a list of KPIs? Here's what you're going to be expected to deliver in your first year. And I'll tell you, that actually worked for me because I had not worked in restaurants. I'd been in TA for a long time and I was looking for something a little different.
Yeah.
And I applied to the role for PF Chang's, not knowing anybody there. I applied to the role because even though I didn't have restaurant, I could do all the KPIs that were listed. And so I applied, and that was a conversation that MK, my boss, who I'm still connected with, is one of my mentors, that we continue to talk about. If you hadn't put those KPIs on there, I would not be where I am today because I was able to look at the skills that were needed and the things that were needed, the things I was going to be measured on, the data that was going to go up to my senior leaders. You put that in there, and I said, I can do this. So a very simple thing, even just to change the job description, and don't get me started on resumes. Like if we could actually move to more of a functional resume instead of chronological, like that would be the dream. But
Yeah.
if we can give employees or give candidates an idea of what they're going to be expected to do, and then that broadens the conversation once they come in, right? Because then we understand the skill sets as opposed to focusing on a background or an education or a certification.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I want to pivot one more topic too, because and very self-serving here. It's a hot topic. We're actually discussing this. We put a panelist group together. We do these quarterly. I want to talk about employer brand impact because when it's not aligned, right? I think TA efforts and business priorities can impact an org's sort of employer brand, right? That disconnect.
100%.
Yeah. So how do you think TA leaders should make sure that their EB strategies sort of reflect that company's actual priorities and hopefully resonate, I think to your point earlier, with like an ideal talent pool? Like how do we make sure that sort of sticks and makes a difference?
Well, from the stuff that we're seeing, right, you think about that disconnect, you think about how people don't feel valued in their company, right? One of the stats that we have out of the survey, 82% of employees said that they had been looking for a new gig within the last 12 to 18 months. Like over two-thirds,
Yeah.
three-fourths, however you want to look at that, right? Like a huge portion is looking. Well, if they're looking, what does that say to the rest of the world out there, right? Like I'm not happy, they're not treating me well. So that's part of the brand right there, right? If you're not engaging and keeping your folks excited about what's happening inside your company, that gets out. How many folks do we know that say, "Hey, don't ever work there," right? We take those anecdotal stories of it's not a great place to work, and I think if you don't have a strong EVP, I do think that really does hurt the brand. But what I'll say is your EVP actually has to resonate with your TA folks. We were talking to a prospect company about joining Eightfold, and I asked them about their EVP. What does their branding strategy look like? What is the message? What do they want to be known for, right? All of those things. And they were able to send me something that clearly was created by marketing because when I asked her questions about it, she couldn't answer. So I was like, oh, right? Like you have to connect to that. You have to build it. You have to believe it, right? You have to have your elevator pitch. You have to talk about your brand. You have to talk about that strategy. And if you're disconnected from what the leaders are saying, when somebody says, what's your, the BHAG, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal. What's your aspiration? What are you trying to accomplish? If you don't know that, do people say, hey, I don't know if I want to work for a company that doesn't know what's happening, right? That doesn't have a clear understanding of that alignment. You think about, Netflix, how clear and transparent they are on their goals and what's happening inside their culture, right? People say, I want to work there because I understand it. So I think that clear connection with the strategy inside your business to be able to talk about that outside. I don't know about you. I'm guessing you're the same way. I'm a TA person first. I'll talk to anybody. I ask questions every place I go. And the biggest compliment is someone says, hey, are you in that department? If I can talk about that department without being in it, that's a win, right? And so that connection to your strategy overall and being able to share that, I think that moves TA from order takers to strategic business partners.
Well, I agree completely. And the only thing I would add to that, Rebecca, and there wouldn't be much, the only thing I add to that too is it's okay if it convinces people that's not the place to be. If this is
100%.
an honest conversation around, right, it's a co-promise, right? It's the CVP is a value prop. So it's here's what I do, here's what you'll do. And ideally this ties together with here's the vision of the organization, here's the direction we're going in. And if you don't want to work there, okay, Like, I think that's
Right.
great. I think
Right.
I think a lot of young leaders and young EB folks make the mistake, to your point, of like this marketing approach of like, we got to make everybody want to buy our stuff. And I just think that's just such a miss that the industry has learned over the last decade or so to really embrace.
Well, yeah, and it's a miss as well, because if you get them in the door, but then you don't support them and they don't get onboarded correctly and they don't feel cared about and they don't feel like somebody's paying attention to them, like we're moving into a space of, you can't just have internal mobility, right? It can't just be a list of jobs that somebody can go in and, force themselves into. People want to be they want something that's personal. They want to feel like you know me, you're paying attention to me, you're serving up things that are important to me. I'm not having to go out and beg for that next step, right? I'm actually going to get something served up to me. When you think about all those awkward career conversations, right? Like I was just watching Sweet Pea. I don't know if you've seen Sweet Pea. It's on, what was I watching it on? Stars. And she had to go in and say, I think I deserve a promotion. And the dude was like, yeah, no. And then he handed her resume and said, can you throw this in the trash on the way out? Like, think about how terrible that feels, right? To not be heard, to not even be considered, and then say, hey, can you take your resume and recycle that for me?
Yeah.
So people want to feel connected. So even if you get them in the door, if you sell them on all the things, right? As TA, we're good sellers, right? You sell them on all the things, but if you don't engage with them and you don't make them feel heard and cared about inside the door, that impact that they're going to bring, right? You miss out on the whole goal, and you're hurting your brand.
Yeah.
I can talk about that all day long.
I just, internal mobility is a whole nother show. It's a whole, we do a whole meeting on it. 2.5 days. I mean, it's a big deal. Yeah. Well, look, everybody who's listening, if you're on treadmill or whatever, there's a tiny URL. Don't try to read that. Be safe in the gym. It's directory.cxr.works/listings/eightfold AI. Easy to go, cxr.works/marketplace. You'll find it. We'll have it up on there. You can download that report with a couple of clicks and get that. It's really worth the read. And I just want to thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming in and really talking to us about some of the findings and your own expertise. I'm just really glad that you were here. But before I let you go, we've got to ask you the question we ask all of our guests. If you were going to write a book about this topic, what do you think you would title that book?
Oh, the title of the book. I'm trying to think. How about It's a Good Day to Have a Good Day? About thinking positive about how every day we're going to bring our best selves to work. How are we going to think about how we're going to continue to be positive and drive those engagements, those connections, understand what skills we have? I don't know. I'm just pretty a positive person, so I think it's a good day to have a good day.
I love it. I love it. All right. Present company excluded. Who do you give the first signed copy of the book to?
Oh, good question. I actually think it would be MK, who I talked about as my mentor from PF Chang's. He really gave me a whole lot of new things to think about. He is a brilliant person. So I think I'd give it to my former boss.
I love it. That's great. Well, Rebecca, thanks so much for giving us a little bit of time today, sharing the wisdom and the output of the report. I want to encourage everybody to head to the CXR Marketplace, get a copy of that report so they can kind of go through that on their own. Much, much gratitude. We really appreciate all the work that you do. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
All right. We're out of here until next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/careercrossroads, and on Instagram @careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.